Ciao, ciao. Need to check. Oh, I like that you need to check. It means you are working. Two for Leslie, for later. Aiden, also known as Robin, is that for? Okay, Paxton's always me when he's in his karate class, and they're always like, Miss Busserella, why I mean Paxton?
Well, it was funny because I just said to him, I'm like, you just changed your name in here. I don't even know how to do that. And he's like, haha, Mom, you got to figure it out.
It's no problem. All right. All right, well, we will start with some basic announcements and such, and then I want to talk to you guys about the little retreat that you got an invite to today, which kept inaccurately rescheduling itself for today, even though I put in the date and time 100 times. And then also go through a little training on envisioning yourself, past, present, future, and how that can inform our business. Okay, so anyway, number one, I just 5 seconds ago before the call, and some people heard me say this already, went on, I needed to order more loops for 80-day obsession, so I just checked on the current stock of things. Recover in its way form is only available in packets. It is not available in the 20 count tub, but it is available. So now this afternoon, things were still not available, but all performance packs, completion performance packs, performance stacks are now showing as available again. So just know that that's the case. Did anybody order mixed berry energized today? I just ordered a packet of the sticks. I don't like the fruit punch, so I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about this one. And we have 900 tubs of fruit punch in our cabinet, so, but I did wanna get the sticks to try and see. They're good for samples. So try to grab those, having those new products in your hand, just getting the individual wrapped portions is such a nice way to share with customer leads or people, friends, etc., to kind of get them excited about products and to get them in the door. Jackie's at 10, of course she's at 10. That's amazing. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about besides those launches is to make sure that you are continuing, I know we've mentioned this on calls before, to check your leads, especially if you're an emerald or above. You're going to be getting customer leads. They seem to be influxing every day. The days that they're added, there's multiple. It's not just like one here and one there. If they're adding, I get like 3 or 4 or 5 in a day. 5 was the most, but mostly it's 3 or 4, and it's good to reach out to these people, email them, have content ready to share with them, put them on your newsletter list, whatever it is that you need to do, but make touches with those people and continue to check in. You should be checking into your coach office every single day, and just keeping as active in there as possible, because things are always changing and they are trying to keep us up to date and what that looks like. And making sure that you're in Beachbody Champions and up to date on what they're posting in there, in terms of, I lost my train of thought, BOD groups and shipping delays and all of that. They're trying to be as transparent as possible, but I'm sure that their coach offices, physical offices, are short-staffed right now too, and so they're just doing their best. Try to communicate that to our customers. Try not to share in their frustrations. Redirect to the positive. Remind them of what we're living in right now and move from there. Okay, so to talk to you guys about the retreat. I do some of my best thinking when I'm driving or in the shower, which I think is normal for a lot of people. I'm driving hardly ever these days and showering hardly ever. So I think my brain has shut off and my brain creativity has shut down. But yesterday, I don't know. I had some fun thinking in the shower about a retreat idea. I was listening to Fierce and Free and Full of Fire, which is Jen Hatmaker's latest book. I'm listening to that on Audible. It's awesome. I have the training from that today. And she talked about this little, not little, but big retreat she and her best friends in business take every single year, every January for 4 days. And she broke down what each of those days looks like. And one of those days just seemed like something I craved and needed. And she said what they would do is there's 10 of these women. They would each get an hour in this day where they get to just share and speak to all of their successes, struggles, fears, goals, hopes, worries, etc. when it comes to their businesses, their personal lives, their faith, whatever it is that they're talking about. And just share unfiltered, without interruption, for as ever long as that it would take. And then the rest of that hour, the other 9 women in that room were there to problem solve for her, to guide her through some suggestions, whether it was, hey, you know what would be really good to solve this problem? You need Flowdesk. Let me show you what that looks like. All the way to, have you considered, you know, getting into therapy, because I go and here's how that's helped me with this. Have you read this book yet? Because this would help you with this. And just really coming up with ways to help that person game plan, strategize, and have actionable steps they can take when they get home, not just for their business goals, but for their lives as a whole, so that those business goals are more manageable. And then they check in very regularly with one another. And I was thinking about how we're missing out. We're missing out on Super Sundays or Super Weekends. We're missing out on our team retreats. We're missing out on Summit. We're missing out on these opportunities for us to really brainstorm and grow together. Team calls are fabulous. Our accountability calls are fabulous. Our power hours are fabulous. But they are rote in a way, and they are checkpoints. They're not big, bleed ourselves out with each other kind of moments. And I need that, and I'm hoping that you guys are on board with that. So I reached out to a couple of girls on the team just to see if it was an idea that would fly. Seems like it would, and I talked to Jessica today, and so we are going to be moving forward with that. We selected June 6th because it's not too far away that the world's going to be completely back to normal and everyone's going to be like, see ya, and want to have nothing to do with each other. And also it's not too close that it gives us a little bit of a chance for planning. I have reached out to 2 potential guest speakers to join us. Leslie had an idea for guest speakers, so I'm going to talk to her separately to find a way to work that in. So the schedule will be forthcoming, but my idea is that there will be chunks of time throughout a 5 or 6 hour period. And I really want this to be meaningful. So I'm not talking like we're going to cram all this into an hour. We'll see how many people RSVP and what that's going to look like, where we will rotate between a guest speaker and some way to kind of implement guest speaker, have a chance for us to do these breakout sessions in little rooms and little pods of people to do our brainstorming, come together maybe and end it with a workout or something, or I don't know. But I have a lot of ideas. If you have any ideas, please send them to me so that I can make it something doable for you. But I've reached out to 2 different coaches in our network as potential guest speakers that I think would be really powerful. And the one that Leslie suggested is not in our network and would be a completely separate kind of PD. And that is something necessary and kind of in line with what we're thinking about. So I'm excited about it. And like I said, it's not too far away. We're not going to be like buying t-shirts and doing all that kind of stuff. It'll just be more at your leisure, however you can make this happen in your house. Come for some, stay for all, whatever you're going to feel comfortable with. There will be a schedule so you can RSVP for different parts of it. And if, like I said, if you have an idea for how we can make it really awesome, then please be my guest and send that to me. Okay? All right. And that is, I think I said June 6th. I set 8:30 a.m. I just put that in to put a time. I don't really know, but it'll be early. It'll start early so you can have your afternoon and evening with your family. All righty, moving right along. We're gonna do a little vision exercise. We've done things like this before, but I kind of took the Brock Johnson Build Your Tribe episode that I shared in Tribe Redefine, and I took some of the essential elements that he was talking about, which ironically, I was just listening to a Jenna Kutcher podcast today, and she spoke to these points. And in the book Fierce, Free, and Full of Fire by Jen Hatmaker that I'm listening to, she today in my listening spoke to these exact points. So it felt like it was necessary for us to think about. So what I would like for you to do, we talked before about like your vision for yourself in the future, what you want your life to look like and all of that. But what I want you to do for a couple of minutes is to think back to who you particularly were, not just what your struggles were, but who you were, what place you were in your life when you decided to join a challenge group, join the coaching opportunity. For some of you, that was just very recently, or we'll start with that. Okay. So think about who you were. You can write this down. You can think it in your brain, but spend about a minute or two just really thinking about who you are. I'm going to share mine real quick and then be silent so you guys can think. But when I decided to join as a challenger, I was 8 weeks. Well, I decided when I was 6 weeks postpartum with my youngest. I had not given attention to myself in a very long time, and I needed a community. I didn't realize I needed a community, but I needed something, and this felt like that potential. And within a couple of days, it was the community more than anything else that really drew me in. And that's what made coaching so appealing to me, the idea that I could create this community for myself forever. And this accountability then kind of came from that. So who I was a struggling mom of 3, trying to make things happen for myself that I hadn't been making happen in a really long time. So think about who you were then. Once you've identified who you were, I want you to think of 3 adjectives you would use to describe how you were feeling, or just feeling words if you aren't a big fan of parts of speech. So 3 ways that you were feeling in those moments. For me, I was feeling disconnected. I was feeling tired, and I was feeling out of shape. Right? So those would be 3 ways that I would describe myself in those moments, how I was feeling. From this opportunity, if I was feeling disconnected, I have been able to find connection. And I talk very much about that in my posts. We talk about that on these calls. I was tired. I have found health and I have found energy. I was out of shape and I have found, consistency, right? In terms of strength and muscle capacity and all that kind of stuff. That's easy. It's easy for us to flip it and constantly showing how much we've grown. But I want us to find compassion for who we were then and who we continue to be now, because there are still so many areas in our life where we are continuing to look for growth. I think it's so simple for us to focus on those initial transformations. I went from disconnected to connected. I went from tired to energetic. I went from out of shape to losing the baby weight. Those are easy transformations. And it's easy for us to be happy with them because we are in a different place right now. But I want us to understand self-compassion, and this is where I'm going to bring in Jen Hatmaker, so that we can do a couple of things. We can remember who we were then, so we can really dial into the people that we can best serve because we know what their potential journey can look like. And I also want us to dial into who we are now and where we can be compassionate for ourselves and what that can look like for people who are more in our stage of life right now. So if we can identify ways of remembering that person and talking about and serving that person, while also talking about and serving ourselves right now, we've in a way widened our net of our audience, because we are both our past and our present and our future. And we can meet women in all of those stages and help them more so than just like losing the baby weight, right? That's like one element of it. So in Jen Hatmaker's book, which I've mentioned a few times and the title is always messing me up, Fierce, free, and full of fire. And P.S. I do plug it on Audible. I haven't finished it yet. It is not quite untamed for me, but it is still fabulous. And the coolest thing about her reading it is she is so clear about the fact that since she's reading it out loud to you, she is adding things all over the place. Like she'll be like, okay, sidebar, listener. This is what I was really thinking when I wrote this chapter. And she like goes off on all these tangents. She includes elements or clips from her podcast that inspired the chapter. So it's a real benefit to listen to it because you get a lot more content than you do by just reading the book. But in chapter 4, she focuses on self-compassion. And I was listening to this on Saturday and it was really perfect. I kind of needed this reminder. And she said in it that it's very important that we don't keep piling negativity on ourselves when we are most vulnerable. It's harder to come back from than the act that made us vulnerable in the first place. So when you think about who you were when you joined your first challenge group, or who you were when you decided to become a coach, or who you were last week when you were having an imposter syndrome or quarantine craziness or whatever it is that you were feeling, when you think about that person and why she is in that rut or just in that off moment, the worst thing we can do for ourselves is beat ourselves up over it. And I think that as reflective, leadership driven women, in a way that's kind of innate because we think it's being reflective, but instead it's oftentimes poisonous, and it creates a lot of added stress that, as she points out, is much more difficult for us to get over than the act itself. So there are, excuse me, I was going to say 4. There are 3 steps to self-compassion that she shares that really resonated with me, and I wanted to share them with you, and I will make the connections, I promise. So the first one is called self-kindness. The second is common humanity. And the third is mindful acceptance. And she said, when a woman can adopt these 3 parts of self-compassion, it's much more easy to be compassionate with yourself. Because saying you're self-compassionate, she said it's so much more important to be self-compassionate than it is to be self-confident. Self-confident is when you own your strengths. Self-compassion is when you're okay with your flaws and okay with your growth and in being gentle with yourself in those. But she said there are different ways we have to be compassionate with ourselves. Sometimes we need self-kindness. And she said that's when we're maternal to ourselves. If your kid has a bad day, I'm sure there are plenty of times when you're very aggravated or you've lost your patience. But at the end of the day, you're going to give them a hug and you're going to give them a kiss and you're going to tell them that you love them and you're going to tell them how amazing they are and how important they are to you and how much their friends really do love them. Or you're going to say those things. And she said it's super important for us to go to bed with those thoughts. It's super important for us to be kind to ourselves, to be maternal to ourselves when we're in those dark moments. If you find yourself beating the crap out of yourself mentally, emotionally, etc., take a step back and think to yourself, how can you be more maternal? How can you be kinder to the person you are today, the person who's hurting, the person who's struggling? The second one, common humanity, is to remember that you are not alone. Life is hard because life is hard. Life isn't hard because you suck. Life isn't hard because your kid's nuts. Life isn't hard because 3rd grade math is ridiculous, okay? Life is hard because life is hard. It's hard. If it's not hard, you're not doing it. You're not participating in life, okay? So it's going to be hard sometimes. And maybe common humanity is easier when you go through something that your best friend has gone through before. And so you can imagine, oh, if Teresa did this, I can do this. Or if Robin did this, I can do this. That's easy. And sometimes we don't have a direct example, unless I'm thinking of a television show or a novel I've once read. But it's not true that you're the only person that's experiencing any of this. We are all experiencing this. So if you can't find that example, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist and you're, the worst and you can't handle life or whatever. Life is hard because life is hard. It's not hard because you suck. And remembering that is really important. And the final one is mindful acceptance. And she said this takes a lot of practice. It's the most difficult one. And it's when you take a detached observer's view. It would remind me, the way she talked about it, she's like, you want to think about, your friend who's going to tell you honest truth and who's going to walk you through it with logic. And I immediately thought of Jackie. I feel like that's Jackie. I feel like, you're welcome. No, I feel like she can take a detached approach. So when I'm feeling angsty about something or unsure about something or moving too fast through something, I can go to Jackie and she'd be like, that's unnecessary. Don't do that. Don't say that. Don't, whatever. And move on. What's that?
I don't have any feelings. That's why.
No, it's because you can be detached about my life. I can't be detached about my life so easily. And at school, I have a friend who can do that for me because I just can't. I'm wrapped up in emotional things. But for example, I have a good friend at school who has some like strange going ons with her marriage. And she and I were texting the other day, and I was giving her advice that I can't even give myself. But it's easy because I'm not in her marriage and I'm not in her life. And so thinking about what your best friends would tell you, the detached, perfectly detached, not emotionally detached, but like logically detached, non-emotional one in those moments of crisis, try to think about what they would say and give yourself that kind of self-compassion. And those are the messages that we should be putting into our posts, into our stories, into our invitations that we send to people. I've talked to you guys a million times over the couple of years that we've been doing these calls about the story pyramid and conflict and resolution. Like, it's real important to have all that in your posts. But speak kindly to yourself. Speak with that humanity. Speak with that detached acceptance. It's not detachment like, well, I just didn't suck. Life was hard, and that's why I gained 75 pounds over quarantine. No, none of that BS. But like honest, truthful, it's okay to have struggled. It's okay to have binged. It's okay to have done these things. I don't want to do them again, but this is where I was, and it's okay. And if you're there, it's okay, and here's why. And here's what's possible for you. So infusing this compassionate language into our posts just might have those women who were us 6 years ago, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 weeks ago when we first joined, or us yesterday before we listened to this call, or us a week from now before we finish Jen Hatmaker's book, and then 2 weeks later once we finished it, who can really understand all of these moments of growth and all of these moments of our journey. So think about how we can weave in that compassion. I can't give you that answer, but when you're posting about your struggles, when you're posting about your transformation, whether it's from the day you signed up to just from this morning when you got in an argument with your kid and how you were able to make it through the day as a result because of one of these strategies, use this language. And the women who are you or were you are going to start listening, because they're going to start seeing how kindly and accepting and positively you are towards yourself. And that will inspire them to do the same. And they'll know exactly who they can talk to and who they can trust, who understands that journey and understands what it feels like and understands this isn't easy. And it takes work and it takes practice and it takes reminding ourselves so that we can remind everybody else. One thing that I've started to do a little bit more, and I have to be continuing to do this more for myself, not necessarily for you or anyone else, is be honest in my social media about my reason for posting. Not that I am sharing this motivational quote because like gung ho, I know exactly what you need today, but I'm sharing this motivational quote because it's exactly what I need today. Because I don't wake up with motivation every day. I haven't woken up with motivation for a really long time, right? It's been a rough kind of few months, maybe year for me. And when I am more transparent about that, and when I'm able to give more of that compassion to myself and show I'm sharing this because I need the reminder. So when I open up my phone, I know where to look for motivation because I'm giving it out there. Not because I am motivated, but because I need this motivation. So I'll provide it. I'll craft it for myself so that I have it and I can own it and we can do it together. When I'm honest about that, that's when my invitations go better. That's when my conversations behind the scenes are smoother. That's when people are reaching out to me more than I'm reaching out to them. And it's a real jump and it's a real honesty point. We are not meant to be perfect. We are not meant to be billboards for Beachbody. We are not meant to be billboards for this stellar summer body and perfect nutrition and all of that. We are meant to be our human living selves. In Jen's book and in Brock's podcast on his mom's podcast and in, who did I say it was? Jenna Kutcher. They all talked about this today that just felt like it brought everything home. And that was that if there are 1 million people doing what it is that you set out to do, like all of us health coaches, right? There's 450,000 Beachbody coaches. The worst thing we can think about is there's no room for me. There's so many of us. But instead think of it in this 2 ways. Number one, there's so many of us, that means there are so many people that need our help. And number 2, there's not one other person that's you. Not one other person can do this like you. Not one other person can provide the motivation and compassion that you can, or the honesty to your journey. But there are definitely people out there very close to you who need that, who need someone like you to cut the bullshit and to be honest and to be real and to be compassionate. Because if you can be compassionate with yourselves, they have permission to do the exact same thing. Okay? All right. Anyway, and no one needed to reply to that. That was rhetorical. Here's where I'm at. I am in a transitional phase. Details to come. All right? And it's been a weird, wild ride. It's been a year, I guess, of reflection and figuring out things and trying to find where I'm best and how I'm best. And then beating the poop out of myself when I'm not at my best. And when you beat the poop out of yourself, and I think you're a human or just maybe a person like me, it puts you in a backslide. At least that's how it works for me. I get frozen and I get lost and I get these feelings that I'm not good enough and I'm not the person that I'm supposed to be and I'm not the leader that I promised, or that I'm not going to be the leader that I promised in whatever capacity. And this has been so helpful for me to understand what that looks like. And I'm sharing this with you guys because I know there have been so many calls or posts that I've done and I'm like, look who's back, like I'm ready to go. And I promise not to be the leader who ghosts and the leader who doesn't show up and do what she's supposed to do. And so I keep a presence, but I have not been the presence that I've wanted to be. And I just want you to understand that my intentions have always been to be that presence and to be the best that I can be. But for mitigating circumstances, internal whatever mishaps and lack of self-compassion, I haven't been fully. But I am finding through a lot of work and a lot of personal development and therapy and honesty and weird conversations and big changes that the person that I'm supposed to be is exactly who I am. And this is the person who can do what I set out to do. So I am sharing that, I guess, to just give you a little bit of my reality and to promise you that even if I'm not always vocal, if I'm having an off day and if I'm feeling down, there is not a reason that one of you can't reach out to me because you need help with something, because you wanted to start, do an Instagram live and you're nervous about a topic, or because you have a customer who needs help with this, or a new coach that you want to train. Even if I'm not active or if I'm having a freaking weird day, when I find I have a place and I find like there's a job for me, I come out and I feel really good about it. I'm kind of talking in circles now. I'm hearing a crying child and it kind of throws me off a little. I guess my point, I've gone way off script here. My point is this: I'm doing my best. My best looks different every day. I'm trying to give my 100% every day. Sometimes my 100% is ginormous and like could fill this cup or a well or a world. And sometimes my 100% is like the size of my pinky nail, but I will always give my 100%. But whether my 100% is large or small, I have a place for each of you in my life, or I wouldn't be doing this for as long as I've been doing it. So just understand that and roll with me a little. And find the places where you can lead and find the places where I can help you lead, and go with those too. If you feel inspired to do something in a team page, do it. If you need my help with something, ask for it. Know I'm here, know that I'm trying my best, and know that self-compassion goes a really long way, and I extend it to you and to myself maybe for the first time in a really long time. So anyway, I've talked in 100 circles. Here is the action for tonight, because I don't want to make this too long and it's already 9:31. I would like to send invites because I didn't send all of mine today. So I'm going to ask you to send 3 invites, please. You can send voice memo invites. You can send follow-ups if you need to, coach invites if you've been afraid to send coach invites, but 3 invites of some kind or follow-ups to invites before you exit, and then you are free to go. All right? Yay. I'm going to stop the recording because I always forget to do that, and then we're BSing, and then it